Hello, fellow YouTubers. This is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music. And in this video, we're going to take a look at triads, their inversions, and different voicings for triads. So just to keep things simple, we'll start with the C scale. So here we have your basic C scale. And then we'll start with the C major chord. So as we take a look at our scale, so starting with middle C, so here would be the first note, second note, third note, fourth note, fifth note, sixth note, seventh note, eighth note, as we have on the chart here. There's your first, your second, third, fourth note of the scale, fifth note, sixth note, seventh note, and eighth note of the scale. And the C major chord is basically the first, third, and fifth note of the scale. And we can do inversions with that. So here's the root position. The first position is called the root position. Then if we take the bottom C and raise it up an octave to, in this case, C5, we have the first inversion. And if we take the lowest note and raise it up again, we now have the second inversion. So this is something you want to become fluid in doing for all of your major scales and even your minor scales. So here we have the C minor. So that would be the first, the flatted third. So here's the third note of the scale. If you flat it, you're down here at E flat. And then the fifth note of the scale. So first, third, flat third, and fifth. So we have the C minor scale. And then this is your root position. This would be your first inversion by, again, taking the bottom note and raising it up an octave from C4 up to C5. And then the second inversion, we raise the lower note of the first inversion up an octave to E flat. So there we have it. And in addition to the inversions, we have different voicings that we commonly use. And one of those, let's suppose we have our C major chord. Now if I leave the E here and bring the C and G down an octave, I have this voicing here, the C, G, and E, called the spread triad. So in that case, there's the octave, so there would be the ninth. The second note of the scale, an octave above, becomes the ninth. And then the third note of the scale, an octave above, becomes the 10th. So this is actually a C 10th chord. But it's basically, you just take that chord, or if I play it down an octave, and then I take the third and move it up an octave. And so I have this voicing. So you can just think of it as the basic triad, move the middle note up an octave, and you have the voicing. And that's how you actually perform it in general. And then the C minor chord that we looked at. So here's the C minor chord an octave lower. If I bring the E flat, the middle note, which is the flatted third up an octave, I now have that voicing. So that's commonly used in strings and brass in orchestrating. And then the next chord we have is the augmented chord, and that's basically the sharp 5. So you have your first note of the scale, third note, then you go to your fifth, and then you sharp it, which means you raise it a semitone. So there's our C augmented. And then if we do inversions, there would be the first inversion, And there's the second. Now, if we take a look at the second inversion, we actually have an E augmented chord, because in the scale of E major, there's your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So what the first inversion of the C augmented ends up being the E augmented. And then the next inversion, so again, here's our root position, first inversion. Now we're at second inversion of the C augmented, and we actually get an A flat augmented chord. So it's sort of interesting that the inversions of the augmented are themselves augmented chords. And this is the A flat augmented. Here would be your A flat major. Whoops. There's your A flat major scale. So there's the third, there's the fifth, you augment it, and there's our second inversion of the C augmented. And then the next triad we'll look at is the C diminished. So that has a flat 3 and a flat 5. So here's your 3 and your 5. So you flat the 3 by moving the third down a half tone, and then you flat the 5 by moving it down a half tone. And then we have the first inversion of that. And then we can take the second inversion by bringing the E flat up an octave. And also with these, we can do the same thing we did before with the C major and C minor chord, is we can take the third and move it up an octave. In this case, it's the flat third. So there you have a stretched triad with the C diminished chord. So the next triad we'll look at is the sus2, which is basically the 1, 2, and 5. And then the inversions of that. So if I take the lower note and raise it up an octave, there would be your first inversion. And this is an interesting chord. When we get into seventh chords, we'll see that if you raise this is actually, if I look at this scale here, the Dorian scale, which is the second mode of the C scale. Here you have Ionian. So here you have Dorian. Just start on the second note of the C scale. Then this first inversion of the sus2 is actually the first and fourth and seventh of the D Dorian scale. And so this would be the minor third of the scale. This would be the fourth. So you actually have a 4-7 chord. So the first inversion of the sus2 is a 4-7 chord. And then if we do the next inversion, we get this voicing, which is a G sus4, because here's your G scale, the first 5 notes, and so the C5 is actually the fourth note of the scale, so you have a sus4. So the inversions of the sus2 are those, and you can voice those as well. So if I'm down here with the sus2, then I could take this D and voice it up an octave. So this is a common voicing, works great for brass, because what you actually have is fifths. So there's from C to G is a fifth, and from G to D is a fifth. So that stretched triad becomes, actually it's called the ninth, because remember D is the second note of the C scale, and if you move it up an octave you get 9, because here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's 10, 11, 12, and even 13. So in the C scale it's really easy to see the relationship of the notes. So basically your second moved up an octave becomes a ninth. Your third move up an octave becomes a 10th. Your fourth move up an octave becomes an 11th. Your fifth is a 12th, and your sixth moved up an octave becomes a 13th. So we have the next we have the C sus4, which is the 1-4-5 of the scale, and you can do inversions of those. Here would be first inversion, and notice you're back with first inversion. You actually get a sus2 in the F scale, because the F scale, the first 5 notes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you actually have a sus2, the first inversion of the C sus4 is an F sus2. And then the next inversion, you get that 4-7 again, because here's, if we think of that as a root in the G scale, that's the 4th and that's the 7th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's actually the flat 7 of the G scale, or dominant 7. So it's basically a G dominant 7 with a 4. Starting, so first inversion of the C sus2 was also a 4 with a flatted 7, because in the D scale you have, so if you flat the 7, there's your 7. So we see those two things in common. Now, what I've done is just taken those stretch triads, the tenths in general, and then just did a sequence. So we have the C chord, the E minor chord, the D chord, the B minor chord, and the C chord, which are basically starting with your triad. Like here's your C chord, then E minor, then D, B minor, C. And then we did the C over E. So that's basically just the C chord first inversion. Then we went to an F chord, and these are stretch triads, so we stretched them out. And then D over F sharp would basically be your D chord first inversion. And then you stretch that out. You take the middle note and raise it up an octave. So like this. So that would be a D over F sharp, or bringing it down an octave. So your F sharp's in the bass. Then you have your first and your fifth up here. And then we have the G chord, but we stretched it out. So here's the G chord. You take the middle note, raise it up an octave, and you have the G stretch triad. And then we did the E over G sharp. So there's your E chord. Or I'll bring it down here. Take the middle note, bring it up an octave. But that's an E over G sharp. So basically we take the first inversion and then bring the middle note up. So you have that. Then the A minor. So you take your middle note, raise it up an octave. It's in root position. Now we have the E minor chord, but it's in, G's on the bottom. So we have the first inversion. And then you take the middle note, raise that up an octave, and you have that. And then D minor. The next one down here in our sequence, I guess measure 19, 20, 21. So take that, take the middle note, raise it up an octave, and you have that. And then now we have the C chord, but we have first inversion because E's in the bass. Then you take the middle note, raise that up an octave, and you have that. And then the C minor, E flat in the bass, so that's first inversion. And then we bring the middle note up an octave. We have that voicing. So all these are really pleasant voicings. And then we have the B flat chord, first inversion. So I'll bring it down an octave, take the middle note, raise it up an octave. And then we have the D minor. So that's just basically that triad. Take the middle note, raise it up an octave, and you get the stretch triad for D minor. And then we have the A chord with the C sharp at the bass. So that's basically go up the first inversion. Oh, actually, yeah, C sharp's in the bass. Then take your middle note, bring it up an octave, and you have that. Then you have the A minor, and then first inversion, and then bring the middle note up an octave, and you have that. So what I've done is just done the stretch triads with either the root position or the first inversion, and this is what it sounds like. Actually, let's start from here. Here we go. So it's what you want to do with these stretch triads is practice or actually come up with your own different chord sequences and practice the voicings in them. These voicings, these stretch triads only use the major and the minor, as most cues do, but you can get into the C augmented voicings as well as the sus voicings, sus2, sus4. And then, of course, your augmented diminished. And you can come up with some really amazing, nice sounding melodies. And we haven't even talked about the major and the minor sevenths, the diminished sevenths, the seventh, the half diminished sevenths, and so forth, which can add even more color to your string section or your brass section or just piano cues. So that will bring this video to an end. So if you like this video, please click like. If you wish to be notified of upcoming videos, please subscribe and also keep this channel going. So, Bill McFadden signing off from Tone Pure Music.